1 week season.
What's up, OWS fam? Sandomir here with another MLB best ball draft. You can see here we're starting. We got second pick, so almost certainly Aaron Judge is how we're going to start this team. I think Juan Soto is fine if you want to start Juan Soto instead, but generally speaking, for early round picks, because it's hard to be overweight these players unless drafts get weird, right? Like I'm never going to get Ohtani at second, or very, very, very rarely. So I tend to just kind of go with ADP for the first couple of picks because these early picks have the kind of ceiling that can just absolutely tank you if they have a big season and you don't have them. So I try not to fade the very early round picks. And he goes to Ohtani, so I go Judge. Ta-da! We shall hope for a healthy Aaron Judge season for this roster. So now if we think about how it's going to come back around to me, I'm going to end up with pick, if we scroll over, we can see where we are. So I'm pick 23 and then pick 26. So if I start by ADP and see what kind of players tend to be around there, it's unlikely I'm going to get someone like a Lindor or a Guerrero or even a Merrill, although occasionally, but it's most likely I'm going to be looking at somebody like this tier: Olsen, Rooker, Freeman, Ozuna, Langford, Harper, Teoscar. And so there's a couple ways you can think about doing a build like this. There's a lot of stackable Yankees later on. You've got like Bellinger and Jazz Chisholm a couple rounds later, and then you've got guys who I really like, such as Jason Dominguez and Paul Goldschmidt and Volpe much later on in the draft. So there's a lot of stackability with the Yankees in both the early, mid, and late rounds of the draft. So I kind of like starting Judge because it just gives you a lot of stacking flexibility. And of course, the Yankees are generally, most seasons, score an above average number of runs. They have a good offense. They play at a hitter's park. So they're generally speaking a good offense to stack. And they're one of my favorite offenses to stack just because you have so much flexibility with where you stack them. Or for example, if you went Soto, if you look at the Mets, they're one of my least favorite teams to stack because you've got early on, you've got Lindor, you've got Alonso, you've got Nimmo. Kind of mid-round, you got Vientos, and then it just dries up, right? Like I don't generally like getting like a Francisco Alvarez. He's a catcher, just not enough at bats. Winker's a platoon player. McNeil is a sort of low upside, high floor kind of play. Marte, who even knows, might get traded. So like the Mets are a much harder team to stack. So that's another reason why I'm totally happy just playing the ADP game and taking Judge at pick 2. So we're going to see what comes back to me. I'm almost certainly, not taking a pitcher here. They're very, very, very rarely. I will occasionally take someone like a Scanes or a Skubal if they slip past ADP. Those are the kind of plays I'm sort of not afraid to have tank me. I will occasionally pick up a Scanes share or a Skubal share, but pitchers have a really hard time having the kind of season that puts you in a position where you just can't win without them. You need 220 innings of 2 ERA pitching with 24 quality starts or something absurd like that. And it's hard to see that happening in today's MLB. Like Skubal scored 1,300 points last year. And keep in mind, you can't just look at like what pitchers score versus what hitters score because the scoring is different. But if you think about sort of scoring over replacement, what you could get from another player, you can get 1,000 points, 1,100 points from solid pitchers. So 1,300 points is obviously good, but 200 points above what you could get from, another guy that you could draft much later is generally not going to be you can't win without this performance over the course of a season. Of course, if you get like a 2-start Skubal week and he throws 15 scoreless innings in the playoffs, that's a big deal. But if you look, for example, say, let's take a look at, Brett Rooker. 1,463 points. And if you look at what you get from an outfielder around pick 100, which is where I'm often looking to draft pitchers, let's see, Lane Thomas, 1,070 points. So about a 400-point difference. I'm not drafting Lane thinking he's going to get 1,070. I'm drafting him thinking he'll get a little more than that. But it's a 400-point difference from what you're getting from outfielders in that price range. There's Ward 1,200, 200-point difference between him and Rooker, or 250 points. So like the point differential between an early round pitcher and a late round pitcher, and between an early round hitter and a late round hitter, it's generally much larger for the hitters. That's another reason why I don't tend to invest heavily in pitchers early. So it's coming back to me. If I have Olson and Ozuna there, I might try to scoop them both. Another option, let's see, Freddie Freeman went, so I could, another option here is try and build a Dodger stack with getting like Freeman and then Teoscar. But Freeman's gone. So I'm probably going to pick Olson here and then cross my fingers and hope Ozuna gets back to me. But if Ozuna doesn't get back to me, there's other good outfielders right in this price range. So I'm picking Olson first because he's the outfielder who makes this work. Or sorry, he's the infielder who really makes this work, because there's 3 outfielders who I value similarly in Merrill, Ozuna, and Langford. This guy can only take 2 of them, so I know one of these good outfielders is going to get back to me. Another way to do this, and this is a somewhat slightly riskier way, it's not my preferred way, but I could do Austin Riley. And if Ozuna doesn't make it back to me, or even if Ozuna did make it back to me, I could go Olson Riley as a combination, as an Atlanta stack. So the reason I'm thinking Atlanta here is because if you look at how Atlanta stacks, and if you look at how the Yankees stack and where their picks are, so let me make the pick and I'll show you what I'm thinking of. If this guy will pick his player. This guy auto-drafting? I didn't see if he actually picked Merrill. He auto-drafted Ohtani. He ran out of time. So if he's running out of time, then he's probably drafting by ADP, and he's probably getting Ozuna, which will leave me thinking either. So I'm thinking either Langford or Riley. I have plenty of shares of both. Let's see. By my rankings, I want to go Riley. Sorry, Riley. I want to go Wyatt. I want to go Wyatt Langford by rankings, and he's an outfielder. And Texas does also offer good stackability, but I want to actually, I'm going to go Langford, because if I remember right, I did an Ohtani stack recently in a video. I did an Ohtani start that then changed into an Atlanta stack. So I don't really want to go like that same thing just with Judge instead of Ohtani. But I could have very well gone Riley there. And the reason I like the Atlanta, that combo, is if you look at the Braves and look at where their other players are, you've got Harris, Albies kind of in that middle there, and then no one late. But they're the guys that you would stack an Atlanta stack with aren't really drafted on the same rounds generally as the guys that you're picking Yankees, or is where you're picking Yankees. Kind of the same for the Rangers, right? Like if I look at Rangers, Adolis Garcia and Corey Seager are sort of in those early rounds, similarly to where you'd get Jazz and Cody. But then Rangers also offer like Marcus Semien, who's around later than Bellinger and around earlier than Jason Dominguez. And then you've got some picks like Jason Berger is kind of around Goldschmidt. You got Jock Peterson, Evan Carter, and Josh Jung, who come later than guys like Goldschmidt and Volpe. So like, again, this is another situation where the way these teams stack and where their picks are taken somewhat offset. And so like what I don't like to do is find myself in a situation where I'm trying to say build a stack around Braves and Dodgers, because you need early round picks for those to be invested in those teams. It's hard for the draft to fall just right where you get those guys, where you can get, say, like, like I'll do Ohtani with Braves, but I wouldn't try to do, say, Ohtani and then Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson, and then planning I'm going to get Ozzie Albies and Michael Harris coming back the other way on the next rounds. It's possible for it to play out that way. But it's pretty darn rare, and neither of those teams have a lot of options really much later in the draft. So you're likely to end up with stacks of 2, which is fine. You want some stacks of 2 in your roster, but I generally like to try and have 1 or 2 stacks of 3 or more guys per roster. So I'm really I like to try to get deeper into teams. So let's see, coming back around, let's look at where we're going to be. We're going to be pick 47 and 50. And so again, we go by ADP. We look who's around there. So Jazz Chisholm certainly stands out. So does Cody Bellinger as guys who go with my Yankees stack. Michael Harris is almost certainly going to be gone with an ADP of 42. So I'm probably not getting him to go with Olson. But if I go down, I could potentially get Albies, pick 50, ADP of 54. I can get Adolis Garcia, ADP 50. I can get a little later, I can get Semien. So there's a lot of stacking partners. Seager's probably not making it back, and given that Seager never plays full seasons. I'm a little dodgy on him. But like there's a lot of stacking options coming back my way. And so, it could play out where people take those guys and I don't get any of them. But more than likely, I'm going to get, I think, a pretty good stacking partner in my next couple of picks. I hope I can get, two more hitters who fill out stacks that I'm already starting. Because what I really want to do is, early on in the draft is get these stacks going to 3 players from a team, and then I can try to fill it out a little bit later to get deeper into those teams with some late round picks. Now, he's not going to make it back, or he almost certainly isn't going to make it back. But this is the kind of spot where, like, say, if Zach Wheeler happened to make it to me at pick 50, that's where I might pick up a share of Wheeler because he's, clearly one of the best pitchers in baseball. He does have one of those elite pitcher ceilings. I don't like to overinvest in pitchers early, but, I do want some shares of the elite pitchers, and I generally try to snag them at spots. I generally snag them at one of two spots. One is when they go well past ADP, and 2 is when I can get them when I don't have a stacking partner to pick. So I say I would pick Wheeler here. I might, but also there's like Jazz and Adolis. So there are stacking partners I want to use these picks for. But this is the kind of draft where like I might decide to pick a Wheeler because if he makes it to me, because I'm getting him like almost 2/3 of a round past his normal ADP. And in the early rounds, 2/3 of a round is quite a bit of a discount. Let's see what makes it back to me here. This guy is taking his time. Garrett Crusher went very early. I feel like when stuff like this, when there's positions like this happening in the draft, there's probably players sitting there thinking, I know I've been told I shouldn't draft pitchers early, but look at Zach Wheeler sitting there, 2/3 of a round past his ADP. Maybe I should. And then they're not sure what to do. Okay, there goes Wheeler. So that takes the tough decision out of my hands. I was not sure what I would do with him. So let's go back to my rankings. So I know I like Chisholm, Albies, Adolis. They all fit out my stacks. Bellinger. And the good news is because there's only 2 picks in between me, I'm going to get 2 of these guys. So I'm going to start with Jazz because I already have 2 outfielders. I'd like to kind of balance that. So I'd rather go infielder here if possible, if all everything's being equal. And he's my highest rank of those 4 players, right? I'm just going to go with my own rankings and pick the guy who ranks the best. Now, if he makes it back to me, if I look at Adolis, I look at Albies, I look at Bellinger. Those are the 3 I'm really considering. Semion's a bit farther down the rankings. And so how I'm thinking about this pick, I'd like to get Bellinger, ideally. Even though I have Adolis ranked and Albies ranked higher, I'd like to get Bellinger because I already have 2 Yankees, right? And again, I'm trying to get deeper into one stack as opposed to having like 2 Yankees and 2 Rangers and 2 Braves. And that's a viable way to do it. Like you could totally go Ozzy Albies here or Adolis Garcia. You could totally do that and then think, well, I'm going to get deeper into the Yankees later. Hoping that you get, Jason Dominguez coming back to you in the 70s, and then playing to get Goldschmidt and or Volpe later. So there's a couple ways you could do it, right? In this case, I'm just going to grab Bellinger. So now I've got my 3 Yankee stacks with a couple of individual Braves and Rangers, and I'm probably not going to end up with another Brave. There's just not a lot of guys out there at this point. It's basically Albies is not going to make it back to me at pick, in the 70s. It's possible I could get Profar, maybe, right? He comes in at pick like 66. So it's sometimes, this is when you start to get the draft where some people slip a little bit. So maybe he makes it to 71. And I wouldn't hate that, but more than likely I'm going to end up with 1 Brave on this roster. And so I've got to start thinking now about, okay, where am I going to build stacks outside of my main Yankee stack? Because I'm not doing Braves. Yankees, I'm going to think about, go away. I'm going to think about, if I can get Dominguez, that'd be fine. And then I'd like to get at least 1 of Goldschmidt and Volpe, and that would give me, 4 Yankees if I get any of those guys. If I get 2 of them, it gives me 5. And that's a really nice, primary stack. But I've got to think about where I'm going to get secondary correlation. And so the Rangers are certainly in play, right? Semien is probably not making it back to me, but I could get like Berger or Carter or Josh Young, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, or Jock Peterson. There's a few other like later round Rangers I can get. Or I could start looking to stacks that I can start building later. So like that would be, say, Reds. If I get like Matt McClain, TJ Friedel, I could get Christian Strand, who I love. I could look at Rockies with something like, Toglia, Nolan Jones, McMahon, Estrada. There's some late round Rockies stuff that's interesting. Or I could look at Cardinals with like Wynn, Nootbaar, Donovan, Burleson, Walker. The Cardinals have a lot of late round guys. So I'm just trying to kind of plan ahead a little bit. And what that tells me is if I want to go for one of those 3 teams that have late round stacks, that tells me is I'm going to have to use some late round picks on hitters. And so that means that I can't plan on using those late round picks on pitchers. And so that tells me if I want to start going that direction, that I'm going to need to start thinking about pitchers pretty soon. Now, if I wanted to go Rangers, they're more, well, first off, if I get Jason Dominguez and I'm deciding to go deep into the Yankees with a 5 or even 6-person Yankee stack, then I can go, then I can think about pitching late because I'm really investing this roster heavily in the Yankees, and it means I don't need to, invest as heavily in other teams later. So I can think about getting pitchers later in those later round picks. I can plan for those 3 pitcher picks. So we'll see. We'll see what comes back to me. Whether or not Jason Dominguez makes it back to me is kind of a big deal in determining how the rest of this draft is going to go. Oh, I should also mention the Nationals, right? I could pick Abrams and then try to get something like Dylan Cruz maybe, but more likely someone like a Nate Lowe or Luis Garcia late for a little bit of Nationals correlation. The Nationals are not the kind of team I want to like heavily stack because they're the Nationals, but they're a team that I frequently like to get a little bit of exposure to because it's really easy and cheap to stack them. And they're what Semien. So we're looking at Jason Dominguez and then maybe a pitcher would be how I could see this playing out. Or I could see like Jason Dominguez and CJ Abrams or Willie Adames. And I'm comfortable being light on infield here because I'm looking at both Goldschmidt and Volpe later as Yankees infielders who would fill out my Yankee stack and fill out some of his infield rosters. There's Castellanos. I think I'll just, if I get him, I think I'll just get Dominguez and just go make this a Yankees roster. What are you going to pick, my friend? Kaiser. Okay, Dominguez. So if I hadn't gotten Dominguez, I probably would have gone Chris Sale. Because I'm thinking, if you remember, I was talking about needing to get later round stacks, and that means I can't use those picks on pitchers. And so I've got to think about earlier pitchers, right? And Chris Sale is just a bet on health, right? Like if he stays healthy, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. And he's clearly a value at his ADP. If he doesn't stay healthy, then oops. Another option would have been like an Adames or an Abrams as an infielder, but I kind of think I want to go pitcher here. 1, because there's a lot of good pitchers on the board right at this point. And 2, because I know I'm getting infielders later. And like the Goldschmidt Volpe range is where I often draft pitchers. It's where I'm often targeting guys like Bailey Ober, Bryce Miller, Tanner Bibby, Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan. And so if I'm not using those picks on pitchers because I'm using them on Goldschmidt and Volpe, then I want to make sure I have some pitchers earlier because otherwise I'm going to be stuck with all, 14th round pitchers. And that's a tough way to build a pitching staff. So Cole, if you didn't see, there goes Sale, damn it. So Cole reported, Cole is out for elbow testing. Kirby had a shoulder thing. So yikes. So there go 2 pitchers. I think I'll just grab Pablo Lopez here. And again, like there's different ways I could have gone here. I could have been happy going another infielder. I could have been happy getting like an Abrams or an Adames. Who actually had ranked more highly than Pablo Lopez, right? So if I just gone purely by rankings, I would have gotten one of those guys. But based on where this roster is right now, but also where it's going. So again, where it's going is I'm planning that I'm going to use a pick, around 110 to Goldschmidt, around 130 for Volpe. If I go look at where my pick numbers are back at that point in the draft. So I've got, where am I? So this is a tricky one. I have pick 119. Goldschmidt is pick 118, is ADP 118. And this is one of the downsides of drafting on the ends of the draft. I don't want to use pick 98 on Goldschmidt, right? I mean, I could, but that's almost a whole round early, even if my value, and it's over a round early based on ADP. So Goldschmidt, I might accept that I might just not get. Volpe, I'm a little more comfortable picking at say 122 because even though it's over a round early on ADP, every round you get farther back in the draft, ADP means less and less, and I'm ranked 123, so I'm drafting him in line with my ranking. The other option there is wait till pick 143, at which point again he might make it, he might not. But it's hard to count sometimes on like how you're going to draft in the future based on where you sit in the draft. And like, do I want to invest a pick that early? I don't really want to invest a pick 98 in Goldschmidt. I'm fine investing pick what was it, 123, I think, or 122. I'm fine investing that pick in Volpe because I have him ranked right around then. So if I'm not getting Goldschmidt, then okay, that's fine. But again, that changes. I probably should have looked at that first. I should have looked at where my picks were. And think, do I want to invest in early pick in Goldschmidt? And I could still get him, right? He could fall to me. I have the pick right around his ADP, so maybe he falls to me or maybe he doesn't. But if I'm not going to get him, then I need to think about who else I'm going to get. Matt McLean is a guy I love. His ADP is shooting up fast, unfortunately, for me, because he looks fully healthy in spring training, and he's been crushing. And you can see actually, even I think Underdog has raised this projection. I don't think their projection was that earlier. I don't have a way to go back in time and look, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure his projection has gone up a little bit, and so that's also driving his ADP upwards, which for me is a shame. I got some cheaper shares, but he's one of my favorite mid-round picks. And also, if you're reading my content, I love the Reds as a stack, so it all fits. Naylor's ADP has been slipping a little bit lately, which I actually love. I love drafting Josh Naylor later. So coming up on my picks, let's see, 6 picks away. So I have pick 98. Oops, and 95. So let's go look at there. Let's go look at ADP. Obviously, ADP is a little broken here right now because it hasn't adjusted for Cole and Kirby being hurt. So there's pitchers like Webb, Yamamoto, Strider, Sasaki, Cassis, Bichette as infielders. A few outfielders. There aren't a lot of outfielders left in the higher tiers. Let's see. McLean. I was thinking about getting McLean here. He went well ahead of his already escalated ADP. And this is how ADP moves up, right, people? ADP starts moving up, and people say, oh, I want that guy. And they draft him ahead of his ADP, even though his ADP is rising. And there's Cassis. So I was thinking about trying to get an infielder here, but the two I was looking at were McLean and Cassis, and they are gone. So I'm probably going to draft, let's see, outfielders. I could get, like, Solera would be fine here. If I had 3 outfielders, I'd probably consider Solera. I'd love to get an infielder here, but, like, it's tough to draft one right here. I feel like I'd just be overpaying too much for Goldschmidt. And so it's probably pitch. And there goes Logan Webb. Logan Webb was going to be the pitcher I wanted because he has the strongest inning ceiling of these guys. Like Logan Webb is a guy where if he doesn't get hurt, he's throwing 200 innings. Emanaga's fine. Peralta's fine. Strider, I don't want. I don't like getting guys coming back from injury. I mean, God, there's just these. This is a tough one. This is a really tough one. I hate Bichette. I could just take Adley. But if I'm going to do that, I almost ran out of time there. That was sort of a panic pick. I was thinking about that, and what I was going to say was I could just take Adley. And I realized if I'm just taking Adley, why not just take Goldschmidt? Because they're similar profiles overall, relatively similar projections. I have Adley ranked higher, but like if so I have Adley projected a little better than Goldschmidt. But keep in mind that in those rankings, you're talking like tiers. You're not talking like the difference between them isn't that big. And so let's see. Let me make this pick. This is going to be a pitcher. So it's going to be either Schwellenbach It's going to be Imanaga, Peralta, Schwellenbach. I think I'm going to go Schwellenbach. And that pick there was like, I have these pitchers ranked very, very similarly, right? Imanaga, Peralta, and Schwellenbach. They're all ranked very similarly for me. And I off memory, I feel like I've drafted Imanaga and Peralta a lot lately. One annoying thing about Underdog is you can check your exposures, but it only shows exposures from completed drafts. And most of my drafts right now are slow drafts that are ongoing. And so I can't see my total exposure to those pitchers. But just anecdotally, I feel pretty confident that it's mostly I have more Imanaga and Peralta than I have Schwellenbach. So anyway, the Goldschmidt pick. Let's think about this. So like, I was thinking about an infielder. The picks I really wanted there, like I was looking at, I would have gotten Naylor, I would have gotten McLean, I would have gotten Cassis. All those got taken. I would have gotten Webb as my favorite pitcher there, taken. And so basically, I was like, okay, I don't want to. I'm probably not going 2 pitchers here. I could have, I suppose. But I need, with only 2 infielders at this point in the draft, I felt like I need another one. And so what I came down to is I was thinking Adley, who I have ranked more highly than Goldschmidt, or Goldschmidt. Their ADPs are similar. I have Adley ranked higher than Goldschmidt, but Goldschmidt creates correlation for me. That gives me 5 Yankees. And so I ended up deciding to go with Goldschmidt, even though I was talking about how I didn't want to like overdraft him as much earlier. But sometimes the draft changes, right? Sometimes you have to adapt to what's happening in the draft. And I didn't plan to overdraft Goldschmidt there, but as I see it, the picks I most wanted right there were all taken. And so as each one of those guys that I really wanted at that pick got taken, it sort of made Goldschmidt more and more attractive, right? Like I would have taken McLean or Cassis or who was the other infielder right there? It was McLean, Cassis. I don't remember. There are a couple infielders right there who I would have taken. Josh Naylor. Or I would have taken Webb right there. And that would have been, any of those I would have been totally happy with. But none of them were available at the time it came to my pick. And so I had to change from my initial plan. So coming around to pick 119. Let's see. Now I know I still need, at this point, I feel pretty good about outfield. I could get Wallner here because he's not going to make it back. He almost certainly won't make it back to my next round of picks. And Wallner is one of my favorite in a vacuum, mid-ish round outfielders. I think Wallner is awesome. He's not really a big stacking guy for me because I'm not really doing a lot of twins stacking. I'll get a couple 2-person twins rosters, but it's more so just that I think Wallner's a great individual hitter. This is a spot where if I had happened to make it to this point in the draft with 3 outfielders, I'm almost certainly taking Wallner. Adley would be a fine pick here, just because I'm getting him well past both my ranking and ADP value. This guy has 2 infielders in his roster, but so do both these guys. It's a good. Adley probably gets picked here because these guys all have 2 infielders in their roster. But if he makes it back to me, I'm probably taking him. Oh, there he goes. That's okay. JJ Bleday. Okay, so now my choice. Outfielder, Volpe, who probably doesn't make it back. So I don't care if Volpe makes it back to me here at this point because I have pick 143. And I'm just going to let Volpe go to there. And if he makes it back, cool. If he doesn't make it back, no sweat off my back. Because I am going to draft... I'm just going to draft Wallner. Basically finishes my outfield. I'll get one more outfielder later. Outfield's done. I'll probably... then here, I can either get... This is my last chance to get this is like the last sort of high tier of pitchers to me. These guys up through maybe Seth Lugo, Brian Woo's kind of the last one because he slips past ADP a lot, or he slips past my rankings a lot. His ADP is really high. But it's really my last chance to get someone like a Bryce Miller, a Tanner Bibby. There's all the hurt guys. Kevin Gossman, who maybe turns things around. I also nominate infielders, but I've got options there. can quickly put together a Rocky stack, a St. Louis stack. Sadly, Reds are hard to stack at this point, since I didn't get McLean or Ellie. But I've got I've got Christian Encarnacion Strand as a guy who I think is amazing. Who I can get later. Oh, there goes Bryce Miller. I am sad. With Bryce Miller gone, and I already have 2 high-tier pitchers, I think, okay, I'm going to get one more high-tier pitcher. I really thought about getting Volpe there, just because I like Volpe a lot, and because, Yankees, and I have 5 Yankees, and just going all out of the Yankees is fun on a roster. I did think about it, but I've already overdrafted Goldschmidt. I feel like I don't like overdrafting ahead of ADP too many times on one roster. I feel like overall you're trying to get value in the draft, based on your rankings, based on ADP, based on how the draft falls. You're trying, like in a draft, your job in a draft is to build well correlated rosters and hopefully to get some draft value. And so, I've already kind of given up a little bit of value. Like you can look at where I have guys, like where I've drafted behind ADP, and I've gotten really effectively no draft value so far. Goldschmidt and Wallner both well ahead of ADP, which I'm fine with because I have them ranked more highly. But you want at some point you don't want to spend ahead of picks, ahead of ADP all draft long. It's just hard to put together a strong roster if you're spending ahead of ADP all draft long. So now, though, I feel really good about my pitching staff, right? It's actually kind of unusual for me to have 3 pitchers by this point. I pick, what was that, pick 11? I'm okay with it, and I try to not follow the exact same strategy every draft. So, I try to mix it up because we don't know how the season's going to turn out, and I try to have my sort of baseline of how I draft, but like you want to have some variance in the way you draft because there's a lot of variance inherent in the sport. So now it's time for infield. And so what I'm looking at here, if Volt makes it back to me, that's awesome. He probably won't. If Vinny makes it back to me, also awesome. He probably won't. What I'm looking at then is Wynn and Toglia. So both those guys open up new correlation opportunities on teams I don't have yet. Both of them are guys I have ranked more highly than their ADP. I like both. Like Wynn is a good young shortstop who put up 1,150 points last season. And he's a fast guy. Didn't even really steal. Likely to steal more this year. Toglia is a guy who's stepping into a full-time role. If we project out I wrote this down in one of my conviction plays articles. But if we project out his at bats from last year into a full-time role, he gets to I think it's 1,200-ish points, somewhere around there, which would be great at this, pick 12. And both of them also open up some later correlation opportunities. So there's 3 picks before me, 2 picks before me, so I'm guaranteed to get at least one. These guys are also pretty much probably not taking outfielders. They're kind of done with outfield. So there's a good chance one of these 2 takes Volpe. I'd love if I got Volpe, but if not, no sweat. I need to update my rankings for Cole and Kirby news from yesterday. Mullins. Does Volpe get back to me? That's an odd pick. We've talked about outfield being valuable. And it is, right? Outfield is valuable. But how often does your 6th outfielder put up a score you're going to use? Not that often. Oh my gosh, I got Volpe. Rejoice. Same here, like Buxton. Like your 6th outfielder is not going to put up a score that you use all that often, especially when you only have 3 infielders and you need to have 3 infield scores every week. An infielder and your 4th infielder is generally going to put up more scores that you're going to be using in your scoring much more often than your 6th outfielder. So, like if you're investing a lot early in outfield, which I believe you should. Oh, there goes Wynn and Toglia. That's annoying. I thought I was certain one of them would make it back to me, especially since Volpe did. How frustrating. That leaves me stuck for a sec. I don't. If I get Carter. I just talking about, I don't want to draft a sixth outfielder right here. Josh Jung, I can wait on him. I am going to go Brian Wu. If I can get him in time. Phew, just under the buzzer. That was just under the buzzer. My God. The hard thing about filming videos is like I'm trying to talk while trying to draft, and it's easy to get distracted. And I felt very certain one of those guys would come back to me, but in hindsight, if you look at this guy's roster, he only had 2 infielders, and so he really needed infield. So it makes sense. It was smart of him to get those 2 guys, right? That was not a bad play on his part by any means. It was just not what I was anticipating. I probably should have anticipated it given and had another pick ready, given what he needed, what I could see he needed. But it's okay. I've got now 4 good pitchers. I'm a little more pitcher heavy, little light infield compared to where I usually am at this point in the draft. Usually I'd be like 3 pitchers, 5 infielders, which is, not that off from where I'm normally going. Now we start to get to the point of the draft where your ADP doesn't really matter other than planning where you think you can get guys. And so I have a great Yankee stack with 6 Yankees. Awesome. But I have nothing else, right? I was hoping that Wynn or Toglia would let me move into the Cardinal stack or Rocky stack, but they didn't. So I've got to think about where I'm going. So let's start looking at what I have. I have, Young, June, whatever. Braves, Braves, there's nothing, right? Rangers gives me Jung. Twins, Royce Lewis is gone. Carlos Correa, I think Carlos Correa is fine as a late round pick. I think it's totally reasonable. If I just look, so those are the correlated ones. And if I look at infielders by my ranks, I mean, Muncy stands out as an individual, can be uncorrelated. Same with Yandy Diaz. Same with Nate. Like these guys can all be uncorrelated, and that's fine. But I'd like to, right? I only have Yankees as my only real correlation. So I'd like to get at least, another 2-man stack or 2. And so I've got to think about where I'm going to find that. And so Muncy does not get me there. Yandy Diaz, right? The Rays are just an offense that you're not going to draft into heavily, generally speaking. So they're not going to get me into a stacking opportunity. They're not going to get me into a stack. Twins, right? That complete Twins and Rangers here, that adds to correlation. Nate Lowe, if I got Nate Lowe, I could then get Luis Garcia, who I'm actually quite high on. And maybe maybe I'm too high on. But I don't know. Like I think Luis Garcia, I mean, relatively young guy, 18, 22 home run stolen base season last year on an offense that should be better this year. That seems reasonable to me. Christian Encarnacion Strand, I love, and I'm happy to draft him as a standalone. But if I go look at Reds, like TJ Friedel's fine, but I don't want to draft my 6th outfielder. So I could get something like Strand, Candelario. I actually think Lux is going to be good. Check this out. Oh, hang on, I gotta get through this pick, but let's see if I can do the split here and show the right. It's not really like where's splits. I'm gonna make my pick and we'll come back to Lux and I'll tell you why I think he's interesting. I think what I'm going to get here, if I can, are just one of these guys who don't open stacking, but I am getting them. I'm getting good value on my rankings as well as good value on their ADP. If I pick them at pick 167, there went Yandy. He might take Muncy here because Muncy's the lowest ADP infielder left, and he needs infield. See, I feel like these guys right around me keep breaking my plans, and it's very rude. Yeah, there goes Muncy. We're gonna get Taj Bradley, late round pitcher with a lot of upside, and then we're gonna get a infielder. And I'm just gonna have to go uncorrelated here. There's actually one more option for a late round correlation that I hadn't mentioned yet. Make your pick, friend. Make your pick. And that would be Alec Boehm and Bryson Stott, who I think is really good. Where to get Boehm? Annoyingly, right? Like the frustration I have at the moment is I could have, like, I need a sixth outfielder and I want a cheap one. I could have gotten a cheap Cardinal if I'd managed to get Win, and that had, you know, a Cardinals correlation set up. Let's look at Lux real quick. Splits. Let's see, where are we? Splits. This is just average. Last season, Gavin Lux in July and August. Look at those numbers. WRC plus is a, you know, if you're not familiar, it's a sort of a, baseball's got tons of metrics. It tries to adjust for park factors. Second half for Gavin Lux, WRC plus 152. And did that come out of nowhere? I mean, he had a 390 batting average on balls in play. Normal batting average on balls in play is around 300. He clearly got a little bit lucky on balls finding holes. But overall, keep in mind that Gavin Lux was viewed as, you know, when he graduated from being a prospect, you know, they viewed him as a 60 hit tool, 70 game power. He was the number 2 prospect in baseball at the time he graduated. So, like, there's some prospect pedigree on Gavin Lux. I forgot to look at how old he is. He is sort of Gavin Lux is 27. Gavin Lux ran into a roster crunch on the Dodgers because the Dodgers have infinite money, and so they tend to have infinite good players. He has ran into a roster crunch, but like, he's going to play in a very very friendly hitters park. He had a great second half of the season last year. Like, I might add to my conviction article and stick Gavin Lux on there because I think I like investing in top prospects who don't hit immediately, because baseball is a hard sport and sometimes it takes guys a little while to figure it out. Sometimes guys don't just come out of the gate immediately crushing. So you know, Lux is a pick that I actually really like. Oh, he's not going to make it on this roster because I mean, he could. I would basically have to get Christian Strand and Lux to finish my infield. But if you look at where I am, what I'd like to get is a couple of 2-man correlations, and I can do that with Young. I can do it with Correa. I can do that with this guy, Bryson Stott. And so, because I still only have one stack on this roster, right? I have 6 Yankees and then one of a bunch of other teams. And so what I'd really like to do, I don't want to add yet another team to my stacking by picking Reds right now, right? I could do that. I could get 2 Reds, hooray. But then I'm still like, that's all I've got, right? So I don't have any other correlation besides 2 Reds. And outfield is hard to find correlation for at this point in the draft. With Alec Bohm, I could do Brandon Marsh. That is a possibility, right? And when I'm unclear what to do late in the draft, sometimes I'll just go look at projections and see Underdog's projections are not, you know, they're reasonable, they're ballpark figure. And so often I say, like, who's being, you know, who could I pick who is, you know, reasonably projected? That's led me to get like a couple shares of Garrett Mitchell on, you know, when I have brewer stacks. And like, I just like scrolling. I believe very much in the concept of scrolling down and finding players who just aren't being drafted, because there's a lot of baseball players, and baseball is a highly variant sport. And the difference between a guy who's being drafted almost every time in the 18th, 19th, 20th round and a guy who's not being drafted, the difference between their projections is minimal. And so, you know, why not go with the guy who's not being drafted? Oh, Jackson Joby. Jackson Joby's where his ADP is coming down, and I don't know why. Like, he is going to be awesome. He's also going to throw 120, maybe 140 innings this year, and he's not going to help you in the playoffs. And in Underdog's playoff format, it is tough for me to get behind drafting players who are likely not to help you in the playoffs. I mean, I have him ranked. He's good, but like, he's not a player I'm especially excited about chasing. So now I know that I want Jung as a target. Correa, Bryson Stott are targets for me. If I want Jung, I probably have to take him now, which I think I will do if he makes it to me here. Look, this guy's like completely uncorrelated roster. This guy managed to draft 11 hitters, and they're all on 11. No, he's got Mullins and Adley. Okay, never mind. They're almost all on different teams. So I need Jung if I want to have him. So now I have 2 Rangers. Hooray. And then what I'd like to get here, what I hope, is Brandon Woodruff. Brandon Woodruff is the opposite of Jackson Joby, because Brandon Woodruff is likely to not pitch or not pitch very much early in the season. But we hope, if his shoulder holds up, we hope that he will return to a more regular role later in the season. And so, whereas Joby is the guy who is going to disappear right when you need him most in the playoffs, right when he's most important, Woodruff is the guy who I hope, at least, again, assuming he's healthy, assuming he stays healthy, he's the guy who's most likely to be the most useful when you need him most, when you get to the playoffs. I need to add. I'm going to add Max Scherzer to rankings, I think, at some point soon. He's older, obviously, you have to worry about health. But so far in spring training, what I look for in spring training is not so much results. I look for health. I look for pitches. I look for velocity. I look for, are they throwing roughly the number of innings, number of pitches that we want to see from a pitcher at this point in spring training. Look at where most starting pitchers are going, how many innings they're throwing, how many pitches they're throwing. Is this guy throwing roughly that many? That gives you an idea of how the team is viewing him health-wise. So Scherzer so far looks healthy. Will he remain healthy the whole year? I have no idea. He's struggled with that the last couple of years, which you'd expect from a pitcher who's getting older. But when he's good, look at 150 innings in each of these last 2 years, roughly 2022, 2023, and just about 1,000 points. 200 innings is unlikely from Scherzer at this point, right? But if he did get there, you'd be projecting him for over 1,200 points at these rates, and that's amazing. That's really good, right? He'd be a top 10 pitcher. So I think he's worth the risk to me, to at least consider as a late round pitcher. I've got to think about, so let's see. I'm just going to plug, let's see, I have no more Rangers left. Phillies, I have Bryson Stott. I have Brandon Marsh as options. Twins, Carlos Correa got picked. Who even drafts Carlos Correa? Willie Castor actually has a pretty good projection, but I think it's all floor. I think it's no ceiling. So that's the only correlations I have at this point, really, are Stott and Marsh, which I can do. The correlations on this team did not play out as well as I had hoped, unfortunately. And so my options are Stott and Marsh, or one of the other to get 2 Phillies. Now 2 Phillies, 2 Rangers, and then 6 Yankees. That still ends up being kind of around my range of 10-ish correlated players. So that's okay, right? It's not terrible. But it's not just the number of correlations you have, it's also who's correlated. So I only have 2 other early round pick hitters, right, who are not correlated, which is Matt Olson and Wyatt Langford. But for me, I like to get my early round hitters correlated, because those are the guys who, if they go off, if they have big seasons, you're looking at the really nuclear ceiling. And generally that means they're scoring a ton of runs, driving in a ton of their teammates. And that generally means they're bringing some other teammate along with them into a good season. Not necessarily, right? We've watched guys like Jose Ramirez have big seasons where the rest of their team sucks, and Bobby Witt. But it's, there's nothing guaranteed, but we're looking for where we have positive correlation, where it's likely, where it's possible. So I like to have my early round hitters correlated when possible, but sometimes it's hard, right? Like Matt Olson, the Braves are hard to stack. You have to really commit early to it. And this time, in this roster, I decided to go a different direction, right? I got Langford instead of Austin Riley early on. And so it kind of just took me a different direction. I'm pretty happy with how this roster turned out overall. The pitching staff on this roster is really strong to me. And I don't have that many 6-player stacks, right? It's hard to draft 6-player stacks without sacrificing a ton of ADP. And even if you're willing to do that, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to get that many. Someone took Bryson Stott. Is this guy one of our subscribers? He took Bryson Stott. He took Spencer Steer around close to ADP. He can't be one of our subscribers. He wouldn't have done that. You don't see I see Bryson Stott not even getting drafted most of the time. Okay, so my only correlated player right now is Brandon Marsh, and so I'm going to take Brandon Marsh. That's the only play that has any correlation. Bummer. I never see Bryson Stott get drafted. Okay. What to do? Well, I've got 2 Phillies. I've got 2 Rangers, and I've got 10 Yankees. 6 Yankees. That's 10 correlated hitters. There really are no other correlation options I can reach to that aren't terrible, which means they got Scherzer, which means I'm going to draft the best, in my mind, the best non-correlated play. Projection-wise, it says Nolan Arenado, but he's dust. Poor Nolan Arenado's power is completely gone, and he's still a good hitter. Yeah, see, if I look at these are the top projected hitters, and there's just no one that correlates for me. So, Christian Incarnation Strand. CES is a guy who, like, last year, if you remember last year's baseball drafts you played, he was getting steamed up towards the end of spring training because he was having a big spring training and because he was projected to make the roster. Let's see. Spring training. Let's see if I can find his spring training stats this year. He had a big spring training last year, and he was projected to make the roster, and people were excited about the Reds offense. And I think he got up to like an ADP of like, it was the low hundreds. I mean, it might have even been around 100, and he got really steamed up towards the end of spring training last year. Well, guess what? His spring training OPS is 910, which is elite. He spent last year hurt, right? He was hurt most of the year. Let's go look up his baseball reference page. So, he came onto the scene in 2023. He is only, 25 years old, right? Age 25. So in 2023, he hit 13 home runs and 241 plate appearances. That's not like elite slugging, right? That's not like a 40 home run pace, but that would be like a 30, and if you give him 600 plate appearances, it's like a 34 home run pace, something like that, 35. But an OPS of 805, really good, well above average hitter in 2023. Then he had a big spring training, was projected to make the team. Hooray, everything was looking up for Christian Encarnacion Strand. He got hurt, spent most of the season hurt, didn't hit well when he was healthy. Well, now again, big spring training. Back here. Come on, wake up. My computer is being slow because I'm filming. Once again, big spring training, right? 910 OPS. Awesome. Couple home runs and 17 at-bats. Still on the Reds. Good offense. Great hitter spark. So, like, he's the same player as he was last year, is my point. Does that mean he's going to hit? Of course not, right? But he's basically the same play as he was last season. And last season, everyone wanted him towards the end of draft season. This season, he's going undrafted. So, that's a spot where I look at and I say, like, that seems weird. Maybe I should invest there. And I've decided I did want to invest there. And so he's a player I'm happy to take. Have we gotten any further news? Oh, God, I didn't notice this. Luis Gil got hurt. I bumped him way back in rankings. At least 3 months. That is brutal. Poor guy. Rookie of the year and then hurt before he even starts his sophomore campaign. You got to feel for that, dude. A lot of pitchers injured in spring training. So I need a pitcher, not a belly itcher. So Luis Gil gets dumped out of rankings entirely in my next update. Merrill Kelly is an option. Excuse me. Reese Olson's fine. I don't think we've seen any Andrew Painter news, really. Sorry, rejection. Yeah, we're in the dregs. We're in the real dregs of the pitching land. Reed Detmers is a guy who I think is his strikeout upside is nuts. So, like, if you want to go for, a guy who has really big strikeout upside and hope he stays healthy, like, he's a guy I think he's viable to take shots on late round. I'm going to go Merrill Kelly, who's 2 seasons in a row of 1,000+ points, spent last season largely hurt for a lot of it. if he stays healthy, he's a solid kind of back inning SP 6-7 type who can get you 900 plus points, which is great for a last round pitcher. All right, that wraps up this draft. So every draft is going to have challenges, and it's going to have spots where like someone takes a pick ahead of you, you get sniped on something, it just doesn't fall the way you were hoping. And that was certainly true of this draft, like where I had to, where I ended up getting Goldschmidt early. God damn it. I hate when it goes back like that. Let's see. Where's my team? There. When I got Goldschmidt, the draft kind of didn't fall to me as I was hoping. There were several players I wanted ahead of Goldschmidt, and it just didn't pan out that way. But overall, like, it's rare for me to build a 6-hitter stack from one team. I'm happy I got to do it because it's hard to do. It's hard to do without dramatically overpaying. And I really only overpaid for Goldschmidt. So, Jazz, Dominguez, right at ADP, Volpe. So, like, happy to build a 6-player stack with only overpaying for one guy. So if the Yankees have a big season, this roster is certainly in good shape. So thanks for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed this. As always, hit me up in Discord or comments on YouTube. Let us know how useful this is to you, what you're enjoying, what you think we could do more or better of, and I will see you next time.
1 week season.